Awesome. So, wanted to just like give you a little bit of a preamble before we launch into the case here. This is going to be an interviewer-led case. And so effectively what that means is I have certain modules, questions that I need to get to make sure I'm testing you on all the various skills that we are looking for today. So I might ask you for an initial structuring. You might say, I want to look at, groups A, B, and C, and I want to start with A. I might redirect you to C. That does not mean that you are failing at the case. It just means that I have these modules that I need to get through. So I'm going to kind of provide direction in that way.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. All right. You ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Cool. All right. This case is about Major League Baseball and broadcast rights. So, Rob Manfred has a vision. As the commissioner of Major League Baseball, Manfred has a dream to overcome a sore spot in the way Major League Baseball, MLB, shares its games with fans, local TV blackouts. Blackouts occur when regional sports networks, RSNs, legally block the broadcast of Major League games within a team's local market area to protect the value of the RSN's exclusive rights. This means fans in the local region may be unable to watch their home team on streaming services or national broadcasts, forcing them to subscribe to the RSN or attend the game in person. For example, if YouTube buys the rights to stream a Boston Red Sox games nationally, fans in Boston are blocked from seeing the game on YouTube because the local Boston network owns the rights to the games in the geographic area. So, I don't know, are you a sports fan of any sort?
I am actually a diehard Dodgers fan, so it's been a good baseball season, and I'm happy to discuss this topic.
Just still basking in the glow of all of the money that you spent on all the players to buy your championship. Congratulations. I think you should.
It feels great.
Um, so, you might have experienced this, right? But it's like, Friday, Thursday night baseball or whatever night baseball. And it's like everybody else in the US is going to watch this game on ESPN. But if you are in LA, unless you just subscribe to whatever it is, Dodgers TV, right? You're not going to be able to watch this game. And it feels like, wait, so I'm the only one singled out. I'm the big Dodgers fan in this universe, right? So it feels pretty
Exactly.
nasty as a local fan, especially a local fan who might not be ponying up the $30 a month to pay for um the regional sports network.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. So our boy Bobby Manfred wants to end all this, and he has hired your firm to usher in a new area for Major League Baseball. The question for you is, how do you proceed?
Okay. Well, I think it's definitely an interesting topic as a sports fan. Baseball operates pretty differently from the NBA, from the NHL, from the NFL for sure. So would be happy to discuss this. I think a couple questions before we get started.
Hmm.
What are the goals here, and just how far is Manfred trying to take this? Because I could see trying to scrap the entire collective bargaining agreement. This really changes everything, or are we just kind of trying to improve the TV experience?
Sure. Like in terms of like overall goals, right? Like the first one is just like fan experience and in particular local fan experience,
Hmm.
right? Like
Okay.
I said, I think one of the like big frustrations of local fans is this is my team. I want to watch them and I can't because I don't understand what I have to subscribe to follow my team, right? Long term, that is very detrimental to the future of the sport because you basically you lose people who want to be customers of yours. Um, and so like there's that fan experience. And then secondly, just like making money, right? So local blackouts hurt the growth of the game because they make national deals less attractive, right? If I'm going to buy a Dodgers Yankees game and the two markets that it's not going to be broadcast in are New York and LA, right? Like that becomes it's like, wow, so I'm paying for the Sun Valley market, right? Like that's definitely less attractive as a national broadcaster as ESPN. So then in terms of like how far we are willing to go, I think that's a question we like to discuss kind of in the context of this case.
Yeah. Okay. And then finally, how did we get here? I mean, blackouts are such a pain. For example, I'm blacked out in the Seattle market here in Idaho. It is hundreds of miles away. But recently, the Dodgers were playing the Mariners this year. Tried to turn on the game, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
So super frustrating. You never really know. These lines are pretty arbitrary. So I'm just trying to figure out how did we get here, and
Yeah.
and specifically how did Major League Baseball really allow this to happen?
Yeah, I mean, this is like this is a vestige of a million
Mm,
local agreements that kind of have just like resulted in this morass. So what I would say is like we didn't get here on purpose necessarily, right? If you hit the Wayback Machine and go back to the 90s,
mhm.
right? You had the vast majority of broadcast was like relatively local broadcast, right? And there weren't national streaming platforms. There were certainly like some cable programs like ESPN, but ESPN actually didn't really carry a lot of live sports, right? They were kind of summarily a highlights like network. And so you had local cable providers, local networks, the WGNs, Turner Sports of the world, right? Who bid on and covered their local areas, right? And then, as things have become more national, we just haven't kept up with the times.
Okay, that's helpful. I think understanding what led to this could help me avoid this as we move forward. I've got all the information I need right now. If you're okay with it, I'd like to take just a minute here to come up with a framework and we can discuss.
Rock and roll.
Okay, I have a framework that I'd like to walk you through.
Good.
There's three main parts of this framework. I'm going to walk you through the three main parts and then we can dig into them. The first is we need to lay out the details of our vision so that we can, show what the future looks like. This is really our plan. And once we have that, we can start to get the parties on board. The second is we need a negotiation strategy. We're going to be negotiating with over 75 entities. So this is number one, going to take time. And number two, we're going to have to figure out what are our early wins. What are the kind of the main parties we need to get on board with this? Because if we get those main parties on board, then the smaller parties are going to move. I'm thinking we've already talked about the Yankees and the Dodgers. If we can get them on board, other teams will follow most likely. And then finally, number three, we need to figure out how we market this. Um, I think that's something that the Major League Baseball has struggled with. So it's something that we really need to figure out in this new era. How can we improve? So going back to my first part, this idea of what's our vision for the future. To do this, I think we need to analyze revenue projections and splits to figure out fair payment for all the major stakeholders. We need everyone to feel like a winner, and everyone just to be a little bit frustrated that they didn't get more. Um, but this is going to be a big challenge. In other sports in the US, there's a salary cap, and teams really split or kind of spend and split revenue in a more fair and equal way, especially when we're thinking about the NFL. NBA and NHL is a little bit different, but Major League Baseball, you have teams spending more on one player than other teams spend on their entire team in an entire year. And a lot of that has to do with their revenue from local TV deals. So this is something that we're going to need to consider. I think once we've done this revenue analysis, we need to figure out what does a future vision look like. So how can we do some revenue projections for the individual teams based off of our new plan? We can't talk in hypotheticals here. We really need to kind of nail down what this is going to look like. We're also going to be potentially touching some antitrust law, some broadcast right law, and so this is going to be messy. There will be lawyers, and so it's going to take time and it's going to be expensive. But we need to figure this out.
There will be lawyers. That's the follow-up by Daniel Day-Lewis.
It is. It's not nearly as fun or exciting, but it really drones on.
That's the first one. Yeah, makes sense.
The second, the ground game, this negotiation. As I mentioned, there's 75 entities, and while all entities are important, not all entities are created equal. The Major League Baseball Players Association is going to be a big one. If we can't get them on board with this, nothing's going to happen. Without the players, the game doesn't go on.
Sure.
This isn't the replacements. Um, So another one is, I said a strategy. Who are these key deals? So we need to think about the major teams and getting them on board, because once they get on board, we can start to build some momentum. Finally, we also might want to think about creating coalitions, whether it's division coalitions. So doing it by NL West, AL West, um, things like that, because it can help streamline some of our negotiations. And negotiating with four teams at a time is a lot better than negotiating with one team at a time.
Sure.
Now, moving on to marketing, we're thinking about this idea of more money for the teams in the league and happier fans. And if we can accomplish those two things, we'll think that this is a win. The more money, the owners and the players will be happy, and happier fans. Happier fans spend more money. It's just a fact. And baseball fans tend to be pretty unhappy with the way the game has been. There's been a lot of rule changes of late. The way that the league has marketed itself has really been a challenge. There's been some star players. I think of guys like Mike Trout, who are some of the greatest players of all time, who have gotten no marketing. And so the league needs to figure out a better vision for this moving forward. So we need to think about how we're going to communicate the benefit of no blackouts. And so this idea of happier fans, more revenue, let people be able to watch baseball game from anywhere at any time. Then we also need to join the 21st century. We need to think about how we can leverage influencers to drive positive sentiment and support for the game. Baseball fans are an aging demographic, and we want to try to figure out how to reach a younger demographic to make sure the game is around for the future. So that's how my framework. Any questions about anything I laid out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you talk about it, this is starting to feel like it so often does when you're trying to move off the status quo, right? But that the kind of most powerful like teams, right?
Yep.
Like so let's talk, Dodgers, Yankees, right? Have benefited the most from, right? And stand to lose the most from a change, right? Benefited the most from the status quo, stand to lose the most from a change, right? Like how do you think about getting them on side?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. I think the Dodgers local TV deal, the Yankees local TV deal is going to pay 5x probably what Cincinnati is getting from their local deal. Um, and so they're not going to be super happy about that. So you're going to think about maybe a parachute payment system. So they're going to get more up front and it's going to kind of go down. They have larger payrolls. And so you want to say, hey, we understand you've been paying more for your players up front. And so we'll give you sort of a tiered system over maybe the next 5 years is something to consider. The other one is saying, like, look, we understand that you get more from your local TV deal, but you also have more fans to draw from. And you have more star players. And so when you go to Cincinnati, you're going to draw a bigger gate there, or Milwaukee. So it is going to be a challenge. They do have a lot more to lose. I think the owners of those teams also tend to have deeper pockets. I don't think Stephen Cohen is wanting for much these days, other than, I mean, he got his Juan Soto, so he's doing okay.
Awesome. Okay, great. Now we're going to move over to some chart analysis.
Okay.
So as part of your diligence, your team is looking at the RSNs and national broadcasters that will be part of the future. So my question for you is, what are the implications from these charts, which I am about to share with you? Let me know if that is on screen for you.
Yep. Perfect. Okay, so we have two charts here, or a table and a chart here to be precise. On top, I see 2022 revenue by source in millions for the NFL and Major League Baseball. And we've got kind of five main categories. So local media, national media, sponsorship, seating and suites, and concessions, parking, and other. So if I'm looking across this, I see that the local media for Major League Baseball is almost an order of magnitude larger than the NFL. I would guess for the NFL, that's really going to be radio. For Major League Baseball, this is the TV deals. And then national media. Wow. So for the NFL, which is the most popular and largest, most lucrative of the sports leagues, the national media deal is 11 billion. Wow, compared to 2.8 for Major League Baseball. So you know that's 5x almost. And so sponsorships not too different. We have 1.5 for the NFL and about 1.2 for Major League Baseball. Seating and suites fairly even. That makes sense. NFL games tend to be sold out, more expensive because there's fewer of them. Larger stadiums, whereas Major League Baseball, you've got 81 home games across every team. Tickets, you can oftentimes sneak into a bleacher seat for pretty cheap on a Wednesday evening in August. Concessions, parking, same thing, same sort of sense. And so if I'm looking at this, I'm really thinking about, okay, how can we switch Major League Baseball from a local media driven revenue source to a national media driven revenue source? So even if we can get, honestly, half or 2/3 of what the NFL is getting for a national media deal, Major League Baseball would be better off. We're looking to replace that 2.5 billion with, something in the order of 5, 6, something like that. Now
Great.
I'm looking below at the chart below, which is the local TV revenue in millions by team. So on the far left, we have the best team in the league, my beloved Los Angeles Dodgers, get almost $200 million a year in local TV revenue. What's interesting about that is that's money that the team itself is seeing, and other teams aren't seeing. So if I look across this chart, if you can actually zoom out just a touch, Rob.
Can I zoom out a touch?
There we go. That's perfect. So Dodgers are making almost 200 million. The teams on the far right end, at the bottom end, are making on average about 50 million. And so that's almost 4x between the biggest winners and the quote unquote losers here. And so what I'm thinking about is how can we basically even this out? Because there clearly are repercussions of this where you have the teams on the right end, some of your smaller markets, Cincinnati, San Diego, Kansas City, et cetera, that are not getting the revenue that these teams on the upper end are getting, and therefore they're not paying their players as much. It's a less competitive league. And so that's kind of the goal here. The biggest concern here are if you look on the top end, we have the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Phillies. The Angels really don't belong there, but they play in a big market. And so without those teams, Dodgers, Yankees, Phillies, Rangers, Braves, those are some of those popular teams in the league, and they stand to lose the most. And so without those markets and without those teams, there's going to be no agreement. So I really need to think about how we can think about expanding the overall pie to replace the money that these teams are going to conceivably lose once we go to a more even split across.
Great. Awesome. All right. So speaking of some of those like major teams and their overall grumpiness, as part of the transition, Major League Baseball has completed a forecasting exercise to project national media revenue in a world with no local blackouts. I'm going to throw some numbers at you here.
Okay.
Projection is that national media revenue will be $5 billion in the first year of the new deal, which the league is hoping to split evenly across the 30 teams. Some big market teams are unhappy, and the New York Yankees specifically are aggressively pushing back on the deal. The Yankees are projecting that they will make $200 million in local media revenue if the local blackouts continue versus a $166 million payout in the nationalized system. Further, the Yankees know that if they hold out on the deal, the national rights will only be worth $4 billion for the rest of the league, not $5 billion. So the Yankees are asking for a guaranteed $500 million to waive their local blackouts. Do you give it to him?
Okay. Very interesting. So obviously, the Yankees are kind of a relic and a thing of the past, but I still think they're important. So I'm kind of thinking about this, that there's basically three scenarios. So we can give the Yankees what they want. We try to negotiate and then meet them in the middle, or we're going to just say, hey, you're getting the 1/30th split, and that's what we're doing. Give me a second here. I'm going to go ahead and just like do a couple calculations and think about this for a second, and then I'll get right back to you if that's okay. Okay, so my biggest concern is if we give A and the Yankees what they want, then any team that is above kind of whatever their payment would be, that 166, with a $5 billion deal, is going to walk away. So that's going to be the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Phillies. And it basically creates a bad situation of, if you negotiate with quote unquote terrorist here, then everybody else is going to try to hold you hostage. And so we don't want to do that. So we now think about how can we, play with the Yankees. So at the kind of the $5 billion deal, the Yankees are pretty close to what they were making before. I think, they were getting, they said 200 million. And so if the agreement grows to 6 billion, they're now going to be just as well off as they were before. And they're going to be a little bit more, even I would say, like recession proof, because if they have a bad season and, their local TV network doesn't want to pay them as much in future years, ad revenue goes down, then, they're still getting this money from the national deal. I also think we can tell them, look, we don't want to paint you guys as bad guys. If you want to opt out of this deal, the Yankees don't have the most sterling reputation. They were called the evil empire for a long time for a reason. And so it would make them look really selfish if they were the only team opting out of this, cutting out $1 billion to spread across the other teams. And then I do think that we could offer some incentives to help bring them to the table. So more nationally televised games. People want to watch the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Phillies play on national TV more than they want to watch the Royals and the Angels. Unfortunately, it's just a fact of life for now.
I appreciate that you're avoiding the Twins in all these disparaging remarks you're making about what is really the heart of baseball, but it's fine.
You're absolutely right. But because the Twins got Little Big League, I still think that they're rolling in the revenue from that all-time great movie.
Okay, so what's your overall recommendation here, though? What are we going to do? What are we actually going to tell the Yankees?
I think we're going to tell them, look, with a national TV deal, it's going to continue to grow, and you will be just as well off in what we think of a couple years as right now, and that we're going to incentivize you with more nationally televised games. And if you opt out of this deal, you're going to be hurting the league. Players are going to be less likely to sign with you because you've shrunk the size of the deal to make yourselves selfish, and try to look out just for yourselves. And there's going to be a lot of fan backlash as well. There's Yankee fans all over the country, and if they can't now watch because there's blackouts on your games, they're going to be pretty unhappy.
Awesome. Good. So we're talking to our boy Bobby, and Mr. Manfred thinks that your overall plan is solid, but he realizes it will take years to implement, and he's concerned about losing momentum and wants to think through the risks of implementation and ways to mitigate them. How would you make sure the project is defended against risk?
Good question. Do you mind giving me just a second to organize my thoughts?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I'm thinking about three types of risks. and that we are going to want to lay these out and then meet regularly to mitigate them. I also think we need to work on them at the same time. So the first one is going to be stakeholder and kind of this idea of momentum risks. The next is going to be regulatory risks. And then finally, financial risks. So in terms of stakeholder management, we need to address these major holdouts quickly. So the Yankees, the Dodgers, other big teams. And I'd also want to meet with them in private, just so that we're not giving them the airtime to sort of create, own the narrative. I also think we want to build a supportive coalition. So while we're meeting with the Yankees and some of these larger teams, we're also talking to some of the smaller teams to build this coalition. Because if we say, hey, we've got 25 teams already saying yes to this, it's going to be harder for those other 5 teams to opt out. And then next, we're thinking about the regulatory risks. So this is going to be really important for compliance and feasibility. Want to make sure we're talking to antitrust experts up front. We want to review existing agreements. And, I think the NFL deal is kind of what we aspire to. And so making sure that we're compliant there. And we want to engage regulators proactively. So got to pay the lobbyists, got to be up on the Hill, got to be talking to, Congress regularly. And then finally, these financial risks. We need to really pay attention to other TV deals, the popularity of baseball, because if some of these projections shift, then the whole thing could fall apart. If it's now not just the Yankees and the Dodgers who are worse off, but now it's actually 8 teams, 10 teams, then this whole thing could fall apart. And so we need to make sure we're really updating our financial projections regularly to help mitigate this. And we need to think about some risk sharing mechanisms between the different parties, so that if there is a downturn in the popularity of the sport, in TV deals, ad revenue, that everyone is sharing the burden, not just a couple different parties.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we got our check-in with Robert Manfred tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to be the headline of your pitch?
Okay. Yeah. So I think the headline is that if the goal is to eliminate local TV blackouts, I think we need to create a strategy where we are working towards a national TV deal. And to do this, we need to really create a detailed plan that's going to nail down all the minor P's and Q's of this future state, and then building some momentum with the key stakeholders. So MLB Players Association, some of the larger teams, while also creating a coalition of some of the smaller teams. I do think we've seen that there is more money to be made. However, the biggest risk here is that the big market teams are going to walk away. And so to do this, we need to think through what are some of the carrots that we can offer them, such as more local or more national TV deals, and kind of championing them, offering them more marketing dollars to make sure that we get on board. And then I think my immediate next step would be to start talking to these big market teams, the Yankees and the Dodgers, and initiating negotiations with them, as well as the Major League Baseball Players Association.
Awesome. All right.
Cool.
Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey everyone, it's Kenton Koveski here, the founder of Rocket Blocks. Thank you so much for watching this mock interview video. I hope you found it informative and helpful as you are getting ready to prepare for your own interviews and hopefully landing that job offer you are excited about. We have a ton of great content on the Rocket Blocks channel coming out on a weekly basis, mock interviews, mini lessons, and chats with our Rocket Blocks experts. So if you haven't subscribed yet already, please do so. There is a big red button below. And if you hit that, you'll get all of our content as soon as it comes out. Thanks for watching and have a great day.